welcome everyone to a collaborative Q&A panel between the Corporate Clash Crew's game development team and members of our partner program. For those who don't know, I'm Peter, known to many by my tune name, Poppy Cheesy Corn, and I'm the current community manager for Corporate Clash. While our partners and game development leadership will be doing a majority of the speaking during this program, I'm going to be here to sort of guide the flow of the event, as well as speak on behalf of some of our partners who were not able to attend the recording session for this panel. But without further ado, we'll begin by introducing the members of our team present tonight. So if Goose, you want to start with an introduction?
Sure. So, hi everybody. My name is Goose, or Veronica, whichever you prefer. I'm the technical lead for Corporate Clash, so I pretty much help out all of our wonderful coders continue making this game.
And Alex?
Hello, my name is Alex, otherwise known as Turkey Bone within the community. I'm the game design lead for the Corporate Clash crew. I help organize game mechanics and stuff within the game for the game.
Loopy?
Hi, I'm Loopy, otherwise known as Steven. I'm one of the creative leads for the game. Been here since the very beginning of it all. And basically my role is to tell the people that are all much more talented than me to do the creative aspect of the game.
And Tedster.
Hey everybody, my name is Tedster, otherwise known as Teddy, but Tedster in the community. I've been a co-creative lead with Loopy since December of 2020. I also, alongside Loopy, along with leading the creative team, I also direct people who are significantly more talented than I could ever dream to be. So yeah, that's my primary role on the team.
It's great to have you all here. Now then, before getting into any of the questions, Tedster has also prepared a statement on behalf of the Corporate Clash crew regarding where things currently lie from a developmental standpoint. So, Ted?
All right, thanks, Poppy. So first and foremost to all of you, thank you guys so much for taking some time, not only to be listening to what we have to say in today's event, but also for actively contributing to it. Before we begin today's Q&A session, we wanted to take a moment to be real with you guys and answer some of your burning questions regarding the behind-the-scenes aspect of the team, as well as giving you some insight into the development of Toontown Corporate Clash in recent time. So, as we're all aware, it's been roughly 7 months since our release of 1.2. Since then, we've had a multitude of patches, many of which have consisted of smaller tweaks and bug fixes across the board, including some limited time events such as July 4th, for example. So, let's just get straight into it and address the elephant in the room. Where have the updates been? So first and foremost, we'd like to preface this by saying that we are as active as ever when it comes to development. I know to some of you it may sound monotonous at this point, but we can absolutely assure you that we're continuously working on what's coming in our future updates every single day. To be completely transparent with you guys, sometimes the slowness can just basically be derived from life taking its course. As it is with any other project or organization, we have new members flowing in and out of the team here and there, many of which are vital contributors to our game. Sometimes people just have to take a step back and prioritize their daily duties and responsibilities outside of this project, something we all can surely understand and relate to. Fortunately though, over here at Toontown Corporate Clash, all of our team members are incredibly valuable and we ensure that we're maximizing productivity on a daily basis, regardless of who is or is not available at that time. So I guess in short, what we're trying to say is, we know things have been pretty slow recently, which may have made it difficult for some of you guys to create content off of, but we're working through the growing pains and making the most of the opportunities that were presented. And to be completely honest with you guys, I think the best is yet to come for this game. Obviously, I'm unable to speak on specific future content related things at this time, but believe me when I say that we can't wait for you guys to see what we have in store. What we're working on right now is what we believe to be some of the most innovative and exciting things to date, and we're ecstatic to show you guys in the somewhat near future. We appreciate your patience and support beyond words, and we're fully committed to you all in our game, so as you have been, please bear with us because we promise that the wait will be worth it. Thanks so much, and we're excited to get back into this event.
Well said, Tedster. Of course, here's to an amazing future in store for Corporate Clash. Now then, let's get into those questions. And we're going to start with Ash.
Of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashkowski. Y'all can call me Ash. I am an LGBTQIA plus content creator, and my main focus is on Toontown, especially with speedruns and other forms of challenges. That's what I really love to do. As to who this question is directed towards, I'm not sure who could answer it best. But the question is basically just like, in your Backstage 1.2 update post, one of the things that you all said is that without getting into the specifics, we'd like to confirm that the 1.3.0 update is not more Lawbot content, and we're switching gears entirely to focus upon expanding the game in different ways. That was posted a few months ago, and I know that y'all can't give any specifics, like, of course, but is there any room for clarification on that statement?
I mean, I can kind of tackle it, I guess, at least initially, but anyone else can come on with me if you'd like to have some input. But Ash, to kind of answer your question, to keep it vague, of course, because we don't want to reveal too much, as you stated, but basically, there's a lot of areas, I mean, obviously outside of just the Lawbot specifically, but also just outside of the 4 or 5 cog departments we have in Toontown Corporate Clash. There's areas that, quality of life, there's different categories, which I don't want to delve too deep into because I don't want to reveal exactly what we're doing. But basically, there's just other areas that we'd like to focus on that we think could, make some for general improvement in the game that could make the overall experience of Toontown Corporate Clash more enjoyable, even if it's specifically outside of just focusing on the 5 cog departments alone.
Yeah, I would just add, we kind of see where we're at with Lawbot as far as 1.1 and 1.2. And we feel pretty happy with how far that's gone. And it's more of a statement to just make sure everybody who's interested knows that the next thing we're working on isn't even more Lawbot content.
Kind of as a half follow-up to it, half its own question. One area that Corporate Clash definitely lags behind in comparison to other servers, especially like, for instance, Toontown Rewritten, is the social aspect within the game itself. I know Corporate Clash has its own Discord, and a lot of people love to communicate in there, but in terms of social aspects within the game itself, it seems to be a little bit less focused on in comparison to other servers like Toontown Rewritten. Are there any plans for more social aspect updates in the future without, of course, getting into specifics?
So I guess as I kind of just previously mentioned, that's definitely something. It's no secret, as you said. I mean, a lot of people are aware of it. That's something we're certainly looking to address in the future. We have current plans to address those kind of social issues and how to, bring the community together a little bit more in game, not just out like on any external platform. So to answer your question, while keeping it somewhat vague, yes, we do absolutely have plans to address that issue.
Okay, awesome. And my last question, I guess, would be about a feature that was in the game before, but it's been removed, clubs. There's been a lot of discussion within the community about, are clubs coming back? Are they never coming back? Is it going to be completely reimagined? Are there any plans for anything like clubs or any other like social grouping type elements within the game to be added?
Well, we had said initially when we removed clubs, which has been a good while now, that we weren't ever really happy with how clubs were implemented. So it's something that we've always kept on our minds as how we can build off of it and bring a much better experience. Because clubs as they were was mostly like a chat room with a level system. So we're always interested, and we have always said that we're going to bring clubs back at some point. We've always been trying to figure out ways to improve a club's experience.
Alrighty, so next we're going to move on to our first remote partner. We have a few partners that weren't able to attend this live session that still sent in some questions. So I'm going to introduce them on their behalf, starting with just a little bio, and then, of course, I have some questions. So we're going to start with Soda Peeps. He wrote to us, "Hello, everyone. I sadly couldn't make tonight's event since I was scheduled for work, but I'm glad that I was able to send in this message. For the ones that may not know who I am, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mario, but I formerly go by Soda Peeps on all of my social media platforms. I started creating content around a year and a half ago, and a grand majority of it is based on Toontown. During this time, I've been uploading various videos on my YouTube channel, but I recently changed things up by stepping into the world of streaming. If you are ever in need of a great time, then come check out me on Twitch every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights." And that basically sums up who I am. And then his questions attached. The first one is directed towards Loopy. And the question is, where do you guys see this game in the next 5 years?
Well, in the next 5 years, it's very hard to... I mean, you could ask that question about just about anything, and it would be hard to really properly forecast it. I would say as long as things continue the way they've been, we'll deliver hopefully some of the most ambitious stuff that's been released post Toontown Online's closure.
Very exciting. And this next question is directed towards Alex. And it asks, what strategies are you guys going to implement in order to maintain us players excited to play your own game?
Well, that's kind of a pretty wide range question. It really just depends of what the game design team is designing at the current point in time. Depending on what it is, if it's a battle, we like to encourage different strategies by cheats or abilities that we've never seen before, or done in a different way than you would expect. And if it's something more general, we just try to make it just enjoyable as it can be, without making it overcomplicated or confusing.
Alrighty, and finally, for Goose, how is it like as a team member to work for this game, and would you recommend it to anyone who is possibly interested in joining?
Specifically for Tech Team, I mean, if you're interested in working on Toontown Corporate Clash, please apply. We always love seeing, new devs come onto the team. I think it's really great working on the team. Like so much more talented people than I am that I get to work with. I think it's, a learning experience for me. I'm sure for everybody else, and it's a great thing to go on your resume if you are into software.
Sure. Yeah, the team is, wonderful in many regards. And, of course, tech is hiring right now, and so are many of our other departments. So if you are interested in applying, we very much encourage you to check out our website. So moving on, now it's Fragile Tom. You have the spotlight.
Hi everyone, I'm the One Laugh Uber. I love trying to take the game and try to play it in many different ways, whether it be trying to survive a boss battle with 1 hit point or going crazy trying to fight the OCLO. But overall, I try to promote positivity in the community. So, my first question is, we all know that there's a lot that goes behind developing an update, such as coding, trying to think and what way it should be produced in. But what would you say is the most difficult part of developing or launching an update?
I mean, it's kind of different for each department. I mean, it's definitely different for each department, but so of course, first when we're considering these things, it always goes through the game design team first to ensure that we can establish some necessary grounding and some footing for what exactly this is going to be. So they basically are the ones giving the detail and kind of shaping everything up and conceptualizing all of the ideas behind the update. I'd say the most rigorous process is probably the process that it takes to create actual creative assets for it. That's the one that's probably the most time consuming generally, unless it's a massive update, like for the 1.2 update, for example. The CLO took more time to develop on a technical scale rather than a creative scale. But creative assets are definitely a little bit more time consuming, considering the fact that it has to go through the conceptual phases where people actually come up with what exactly it is that we're going to be bringing to life in 3D space. And then from the concept artist it goes to a 3D artist, and then from there it goes to a texture artist, and then at that point if we need some animations done for it, it goes to another person, and then it gets passed along. So it really is dependent on each department. Each department is time consuming within itself, but I guess I can't really pinpoint one specific department. It really is dependent on what exactly it is that we're looking for and what we're working on at the time.
Thank you. For my next question, if you could go back and change one thing about one of the gag tracks that's now a part of the main strategy, what would you guys say it would be and why?
Well, this sounds a little bit more question for a game design perspective. There's a lot of things, to be honest, that can be changed with the battle system to make it more fun and enjoyable. It's any statement I make can be potentially controversial for people in the community, because people like to say drop bad, throw bad, all that stuff. If I had to change one thing, and it'd be hard to make it well good in the first place, but I would like to change Throw's prestige to be from being as basic as it is. What it would be, I couldn't tell you for sure, or just off the top of my head, but that's something I definitely would like to change, because all the other prestiges do something cool or unique for the gag track.
For my last question, with the release of the Overclock CLO and the new Lob HQ throughout this past year, What would you say were some of the balancing issues that you guys encountered when it came to balancing the MGRs in the OCLO fight, or trying to decide on what the new cog specialist should be?
Well, in terms of that, balancing is always a super rigorous task. It's always something where we start with the base values in game design, and we might think it's okay in the first part, but once we like do a test for the first time, we might see, well, this is bad. So then we have to go back to the drawing board to some extent, and sometimes even redo a feature entirely from the game design standpoint.
Yeah, whether it's adding new cheats or, we just feel it's not doing enough damage. There's probably 3, 4, 5 waves of different various balance testing that goes on before we're totally happy with it.
Alrighty, so moving on. Next is Sly.
All right, ahoy, everybody. So, my name is Sly. I run a very wholesome ship with an emphasis on mental health, a welcoming community, and community playthroughs. So, thank you guys for being here for my Toon Talk. I appreciate it. So, yesterday I had chat come up with some questions, and the top question was, what is everybody's thought process when choosing new species to add?
Now, this is a kind of a tough question because obviously we haven't added a new species since prior to 1.1 with the Outback species. So, and that was before my time being on the team for the most part. So maybe this would actually be a better question for maybe Loopy to answer because he's the only lead here right now that has been here long enough on the developmental side to answer said question.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as what drives us to add a new species, at the point with Outback, it was more just trying to add to the experience of the game in some way. When we launched Outback, we made it a community event where you could choose this whole lineup of species versus this whole lineup of species. Some things that inspire us to create species is just off the cuff stuff like Thanksgiving with turkey tunes. So really it just depends, it's more where the inspiration comes from. It's more or less out of the blue, as it comes to us. As far as species go, we do think we have a good bunch of species as it is. I don't think we're really kind of hankering to add too many more at the current moment.
Okay, interesting. What was the thought process for adding board bots? Like, what was the inspiration?
Well, board bots actually was a holdover from all the way back in Project Altus, which was original idea from, I believe, somebody called KH Decoder, and it kind of went down the line. But I guess the basic idea behind board bots is there's like a board of directors that presides over an entire company. Boss bots are the managers, the bosses of the corporate world. There's always a step up beyond that.
And lastly, and this could go to anybody, what's your favorite thing about Corporate Clash that just differs it from other Toontown servers?
I think for me, with Corporate Clash, it's really a unique experience. So while I enjoy playing other servers quite often, at least, Toontown Corporate Clash brings a unique experience to Toontown because I personally believe it's one of those games that it kind of sways away from what people what they generally presume that Toontown and what Toontown is and how it's supposed to be played. But in reality, it actually is an experience that differs from any other server, basically, to the point where it's so unique and so diverse from anything else, while also still holding like the core values and just the plain functionality and basics of Toontown. So that's what really reels me in, at least.
So now we will move on to Iceman, who is our second remote partner, and I'll begin with his introduction. He wrote, "Hi, I'm Iceman. I am a content creator on Twitch. I primarily do streams, and in those streams, I interact with the community throughout the game." And his first question was directed towards Tedster, asking, "What do you guys look into when it comes to designing certain aspects of the games? For example, the Lawbot revamp."
Yeah, so I guess for the Lawbots specifically, just to address that first, I guess, is we're looking to establish this, like new, very cartoony, very exaggerated style with the Lawbots, as I'm sure everybody's noticed with how the animations are and just how the actual models themselves are. It really comes down to establishing those themes and using the current themes that have already been established previously from like Toontown Online and stuff like that. The lawbots really do. I mean, every cog type and department itself really does have a specific theme in terms of like color palettes and just the overall designs of them. So as long as you can incorporate those old designs and those old themes while still, making sure that it's unique and diverse from anything else in the game, that's really what it all comes down to. So, yeah.
All right, and this next question, I suppose anyone could answer, but the question asks, what is your favorite thing about the Toontown community?
I think just how like diehard they are, really. The fact that Toontown Online closed in 2013, and there's still reliable amounts of people that are still willing to play and are super excited about the future development and content of the game. I mean, the fact that we're all here on this team still trying to create cool and innovative and fun content, I feel like that alone speaks for itself.
Alrighty, and finally, how do you pronounce data?
Data.
Data.
Data. Data.
Data.
All right, seems pretty unanimous there. So next, Smirky is up.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So hi, I'm Smirky. I am, let's see. So I've been making Toontown related content and live streams for over 9 years now, since 2012. And I've been playing Corporate Clash for a long time. And currently do a lot of streaming on Twitch while finishing up school and doing all kinds of stuff, basically. So I stream when I can. But yeah, with that out of the way, first question I have, and I'm not really sure who can like answer these questions, so whoever, you can just chime in. But first question I have was actually one that was submitted from I guess my community per se, that I thought would be really good to bring up. And the question is, will there be content planned to help new players learn advanced aspects of the game? For example, the battle system when it comes to like learning how to use zap and then buffs and debuffs, or even something as simple as like the movement system and trying to get it, how to like adjust your, I don't know, field of view, or just how to like use all the advanced mechanics. So if there's any sort of plan to maybe help new players learn those advanced mechanics.
Yeah, so there's definitely a bit of a learning curve if you're just coming into the game with like no prior knowledge, no friends to help you out or anything like that. You may not know how certain advanced aspects of the game work. And right now, the tutorial doesn't really explain much of it, if at all. So we're definitely looking to make the new player experience a little bit more user-friendly than it already is.
Cool. Thanks for answering that. And I guess a question that comes up for me is, have you, to kind of follow up on that, have you also thought about maybe like revamping the tutorial in any way? It is something that is pretty simple for new players to hop into. And I know that for a lot of longtime players, that's kind of been a discussion for many years in the community. So I just want to hear if maybe you guys have a unique perspective on whether or not the tutorial would be just fine as it is, or if maybe there's like room for improvement / refinements.
Yeah, with our tutorial specifically, it's pretty obvious. It really only covers like the extreme basics. So without like going into any like detail or anything, it's pretty important to improve the new player experience as much as you can. So whether that be in a tutorial or just game tips in general, like our contextual toon tip system now, we would like, at least for me, I'm pretty adamant about improving the casual new player experience where I can.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that. So, okay, so my last question, let's open it up to everyone on the team here. Let's make it fun. For my last question, let's make it completely random. What kind of toppings do you like to eat on your pizzas?
Bacon?
Yeah, I'm a bacon guy.
I like some pepperoni and sausage, kind of basic, but it's good. All
Yo,
reliable.
me too. Let's go.
Also, pepperoni and sausage.
Very nice, very nice. Thanks for answering my questions.
All right, so next, Mega Snoop, you're up.
Hi, I'm Mega Snoop and I play Toontown. I don't really know exactly who to direct these to specifically, but I'll just kind of go randomly with what I've got here, if that's all right. So one of the questions I had from myself, this is something I was curious about, is how are you guys going to be doing your reoccurring events differently within the next year? Like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, April Tunes, stuff like that, because of the fact that I know that you want to have the reoccurring events, but you do change them up differently every time. I don't know if you guys had any different unique ideas or how much you wanted to share, or if you're just like, it's good the way it is, we're just going to keep it the same.
All right, to kind of answer that question a little bit, it really depends on what we're doing actively on the time on the team that's not is being developed at the same time as the event, and if how comfortable we are with the event itself. So, for example, being Halloween, every year we kind of build on Halloween a little bit, but Christmas hasn't been built on as much. But sometimes that just coincides with what we're working on alongside with that, and sometimes we do improvements that aren't visual to the player itself, but it's genuine back-end improvements to the event itself, which may be why sometimes you see our events that may not have much new content, but it's improved on the back-end scale to make the player experience better without necessarily changing the gameplay.
Okay.
So it's very situational, I guess, is the best answer for that question.
That's fair. Yeah, the reason I specifically asked is because there are different things that I've already seen changes. Like I know a lot of people want to see the Sands fight again for Halloween and just want to know that if or when that's coming back. And then I know that you guys took out the One Laugh Ubers for April Tunes. And is that getting a replacement or is that just one less thing that we get every year?
Again, it's kind of situational. One Laugh Ubers were removed for the fact of from a gameplay concern for new players specifically.
Of course.
Especially new players, because every time there's an event, there's always a spike, and it's generally also new players. So our concern about removing One Laugh Uber specifically was that new player experience. They that One Laugh Uber might join the fight, which makes more cogs join. One Laugh Uber dies, and then they have the other person has 3 cogs to deal with by themselves, being 15 laugh new to the game, and that kind of creates an unfair situation for a lot of Toontown Central tunes.
I got you. But the question was more so not why it was gone, but more like, are you planning on replacing it? And you're kind of answering that in the sense of where it's more situational. Well, you're probably going to handle that once you guys get closer to that.
Yeah, I mean,
that
One
time
Laugh Uber being a new April Tunes thing, it kind of just depends if we want to do something like that for April Tunes or if we do something different entirely. It just again, it's kind of just situational.
I got you. Well, thank you.
No problem.
A couple more questions. What else can I change? Or what else can I ask? Another question I had was what kind of expansions, thoughts that you guys had on adding to Golfing Racing Trolley. I know a lot of the additions that people are usually most looking forward to are the cog additions, whether it's revamp of a cog type, a new boss being added, different, like the OCLO is a really big one. Activities don't really seem to have that kind of big emphasis in the game, but that doesn't mean they can't be improved upon, and it doesn't mean they can't be added to. I don't necessarily know how hard it would be to just add a new race course or add a new golf course or add a new trolley game. I feel like trolley games would be a little bit more complicated, but for the other two, maybe just like an outline cut and paste. I've seen it happen in other servers, and I'm sure you have too. But is that something that you guys are kind of thinking about, or is that like really far in the back burner?
As far as golfing and racing goes, it's pretty easy to assume that a development team would overlook them. I think as long as I've ever been on this team, we've always toyed around with the idea of what we could do to add to golfing or racing and try and innovate on them. There's always times where we try to tool around, see what we could do with them. So I don't think it would be wrong to say that maybe in the future we do, provide some expansion to golfing and racing at some point.
And then the last thing, just for now, until we get back around to more questions, is let's go with what are your guys' ideas for adding new emotes to the game? I know it's always been kind of a joke that you could add the default dance to Toontown that from Fortnite, but we've seen that there are so many talented people throughout the community that can make the cogs and the tunes do different funny dances just by programming it and rigging it a certain way. And I don't think any server has really gone out of their way to create too many of these implemented in the game. So do you have any plans on doing that? Which ones would you add and why haven't we seen that yet?
So fundamentally, the main reason why almost no Toontown project has done additional animations for tunes in game is because the rigs for the tunes that were in the last version of Toontown Online are extremely tedious to work with. Basically, if you create one animation for a tune, you've got to create 9 different animations for each different piece of the body, and it just gets really taxing and difficult and hacky to work with. So the bigger problem is if you want to, say, re-rig the tunes so that you can just start going ham and create animations from scratch, that means you have to redo every animation that's currently in the game, which is, hundreds at this point. So it's just a huge taxing thing to consider.
Yeah, to kind of add on to that a little bit, it's certainly not something that we wouldn't consider at some point. It's kind of just one of those things where, animators aren't exactly the most prominent things throughout the community. The ones we do have are amazing. They provide us amazing work and they're incredibly valuable. We wouldn't trade them for a thing. But it would be a ton of time that they would have to delegate their resources and themselves to. So certainly not ruling it out at some point, but
All right, well, I do appreciate that. Thank you. I guess that's all the questions I have for now, but I appreciate your time and your guys' attention.
Absolutely. So our next partner is our final remote partner, Nickel Jinx. So they wrote, "Hi, I'm Nickel Jinx. I like to hang out in Corporate Clash and do tasks, fight cogs, battle bosses, and more. If you see a blue bear named Silly Kong, you found me. I'm a 21-year-old college student studying math, so send me some funny math memes." And their first question is both a technical and a game design question. So this might be something that both Goose and Alex answer, but it states, why do cog invasions no longer affect cog buildings in both a practical sense and from a lore stance?
I'm not entirely sure of that myself, to be completely honest, because I only joined the team about a year after, a little over a year after actually a little before a year after the game came out. And that's been a feature since the game's launch. I've always seen it as in the practical sense of the cog buildings always have the invasion multiplier, like when TTO has fifth floor of a 5-story, you would always have a 6 times multiplier for your experience. So I've always seen it as a balancing where you can't just farm your gags on a level 5 short change in a 5-story and get all the XP in the world easily, whereas here you can do the building as difficult as it is and still get the experience for it. In terms of a lore perspective, I don't necessarily have an answer for that, unfortunately. But in terms of the practicality, that's what I have for an answer.
Piggybacking off of that, I mean, when you consider something like a boss bot building and there's like a short change invasion happening, it doesn't really make sense that there's like a different type of cog from a different department in that building, since that's not their building. Like if you worked at like an investment firm and then like people who didn't work at your investment firm walked in, it'd be a little strange lore wise. So I think sort of that's a good explanation as to why random other cogs aren't in cog buildings.
Okay, this next question is directed more towards creative, and it asks, would the team ever consider revamping all or at least some of the playgrounds?
So, from the get-go, we've always wanted to kind of revitalize all the, we like to say, crunchy Toontown Online assets. I think one of the nice things with the Spotify assets that came out is a lot of those places don't look nearly as bad as they used to. And it's also just a matter of what we're working on developmentally. Creating a whole new playground obviously takes a lot of creative work and time. So I would say it's something that we do have a lot of interest in, reworking the Toontown Online playgrounds. It's just when we have the time for it.
All right, and finally, can we have frog tunes in the game?
I mean, it's possible.
Maybe someday.
Going back to the species question from earlier, it kind of just would depend on if we have the whim to do it, and when we do, and also just the creative delegation of assets and stuff as well.
I would give a firm it's possible.
Yeah.
Frog
yes, it's
tunes though?
possible.
over all the other species options.
Frogs are great.
It's a solid pick.
You don't like Kermit?
Kermit in game.
I suppose it's something to consider. So now we're going to move on to round 2 of the questions. This time around, we're going to go through the same list, except partners now have the opportunity to ask 2 additional questions. And we're going to start again with Ash.
Hello again. First of all, I'm fully behind a team amphibian / fish, if that were to ever come to fruition. Firmly behind that. But getting to the actual questions here, I know at the beginning of this whole event, we kind of brought up the point of that there hasn't really been that many updates, at least in terms of like content for the game. And let's be honest, it's not even just an issue with Corporate Clash. Overall, for the entire Toontown community for the past few months, there's been a bit of a content drought. There have been attempts from other servers to address this in varying degrees of effectiveness. For instance, TTR's quote-unquote next update team. Are there any plans for Corporate Clash to have more short-term content updates, such as events, smaller updates, things of that nature?
Yeah, actually. So interestingly enough, this has obviously been a recent concern throughout the Toontown community and in our team especially, but we're trying to establish ourselves as people who are always kind of ready for what's next. So to be completely honest with you guys, like we have some creative members working on our next big update right now, and then we have some creative members working on assets for the next big update. So we've definitely, while I know it has been slow and a little bit painful at times, we're definitely taking this opportunity to learn as much as we can. Like we're definitely kind of understanding where we went wrong and how we're going to correct it in the future. So we definitely look to mitigate this issue of content droughts in the future, and we're definitely taking the necessary steps to do so. And we've had, and I'm pretty sure all the other departments are trying to do the same thing by staying ahead. So yeah, we're figuring it out, and it's going pretty well overall.
All right, that's awesome to hear, honestly. My second question kind of goes back to the whole discussion of species that we just had a moment ago. Obviously, it's been a while since the last species election, which was, goodness, I don't even know how long ago. I know that I had taken a big break from the game right around the time after those species had released, but obviously there hasn't been a species election in a while. There hasn't been anything big on that front. Are there discussions or leanings towards something possibly happening in the somewhat near future to add more species to the game? Because, of course, I know there are plenty of people out there who have every idea under the sun for a new species. So I'm sure that the more species we get for Toontown overall, the better. But
Yeah, so we have, what, 20-ish species now? I think maybe even more. There is kind of, I would imagine, a feeling amongst the team where we feel like we do have kind of enough species right now. It's not really something that we're looking to necessarily do. Now, it could actually make for a fun event, like, as you guys are suggesting. Maybe it's something that we go back to the drawing board and we consider because, you know, something like a species election does seem like a fun thing, and it does inspire a lot of community interaction. As far as where we're standing, though, we do feel like we have a good amount of species at the current moment.
So next we have 2 more questions from Soda Peeps. The first one is addressed to anyone, and it asks, how can we as players of Corporate Clash help you guys on the team improve the quality of the game?
So I will say thank you to everybody who plays our game. Just playing it is motivation enough. But if you want to help in terms of like making it better when you crash or when you face any type of like technical issues, if you could submit a bug report along with like steps to reproduce it, everyone on the tech side would vastly appreciate it. We can go and fix your issue, and then it makes the game better for everybody else.
And other areas where you can help out is always talking to friends about the game, putting the game out there however you can. And especially those of you that have talents, whether it's technical or creative-wise, modeling, texturing, concept art, drawing. There's a number of ways you can apply to the team and help the team as well.
All right, and that actually kind of leads into the next question, which asks, do you guys have any advice for someone that lives a relatively busy life but would like to contribute to Corporate Clash as a new team member?
Yeah, interestingly enough, actually, I mean, I myself, I work a full-time job. I'm in college, like I'm doing school and all of this stuff all at once. The team is super lenient. Like we really try to be. We've established ourselves as trying to be as patient as possible. It's one of those things where we all kind of recognize that we're all volunteers, and literally any time that somebody with a bunch of talent, like somebody on the creative team, has to delegate towards us, no matter how much it is in quantity, just them taking, even one assignment every month is helpful to us. So even as something as simple as that, we try not to put too much pressure on you guys, or on our team members rather. So any time that you want to like give yourself or give your talents to the team, we would absolutely consider an application regardless of your availability, I suppose. At least for development teams.
All right, so we'll move on to Fragile Tom again.
All right. So this one's more of a fun question that I've wondered is, what is the thought process that goes behind making the dialogue for the COO?
So that thought process is it really just depends on who's writing the CLO. Like, everybody writes in their own way and fashion, but thought process always starts with what's the character's personality and how would you write them yourself, and then once someone writes that dialogue, it would go to like the rest of the game design team as an example. We would review it and see if we're happy with that dialogue.
Are you also asking specifically about Ottoman Dialogue, COO?
Yeah.
Oh, COO. I thought you said CLO. Sorry.
My bad.
Well, that regard, that's mostly a task done by a couple people just to do it. It's done in a few ways. It's one just to mess around with the lore a little bit, get some exposition, as well as just it's a 30 minutes of 20 minutes of cutscene. It's both a joke and a way to just get some exposition.
All right. Thank you.
No
And for my final question. So, Clash has had lots of changes throughout the years to make it the game that it is today. What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned as a team?
Well, for me personally, just the biggest thing I've learned is kind of growing my teamwork skills and working alongside people. And also situations where, a lot of times I know myself I would like to take on a whole bunch of work and try to do things a whole bunch myself. Learning to kind of defer things and allow other people to collaborate and work on things together. A lot of teamwork skills and collaboration with people.
I was gonna add on to that and kind of say that this, it seems like a misconception that people don't really think that that delegating is a skill. Like I genuinely am a firm believer that the ability to delegate work is something that is taught, and it's just like a valuable skill to have. So I've myself have definitely learned some more managerial skills such as delegating work and where to put these resources and why we do it. So it's one of those things where you learn how to like cope with all those ideas and not even just hone in on your current skills, but you actually develop new ones. So it's really neat.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask questions.
Of course. So next we'll move on to Sly.
All right. So my next question is, of course, Team Amphibian. Hopefully, you guys make octopus tunes at some point. But are there any plans to put a buffer between finishing the story and the OCLO? I have had a lot of people mention that the grind is just a little too much, and we're looking for just like some buffer between it.
I mean, to be transparent, I can say there's nothing like in that in regards to a like plan like that now. It's always a possibility. They always add more lore to the game. I know our game design team likes writing lore and developing the stories for the game, so that's definitely a possibility. But there's no plans at the current moment.
It's kind of a tricky thing because I feel like it proposes that the OCLO is the continuation of the task line, whereas we see it more as an addition to the game for hardcore players, whereas we still envision the task line continuing forward. Now, whether you want to consider that buffer or not, I mean, you're free to kind of imagine it that way, but I don't think we're actually intending for things to lead up to the OCLO.
Okay, so like a post game. Interesting. Thank you. Okay. Are there any current or future plans to add anything to estates like the layout, skybox, or home exteriors?
Yeah, we see a lot of those suggestions in the public Discord, and considering just the sheer amount of number of people who would look for something like that, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. Um, so yeah, I would just say that while it may not be top priority right now, it's certainly something like customization is something that's really neat to a lot of us and something that people like to work on the team. So it's something we can expand upon in the future for sure. So it's always being up for consideration, no doubt.
All right, on a real question, what is something you would like to add to TCCC but is not feasible or just technically not possible at this point?
I don't know. I don't know if it's not like possible, but a lot of stuff that's a little bit more like FPS like is always kind of fun to imagine, but it's just like such a chore to actually kind of assemble. Things that are just a little bit more first person actiony, not necessarily an actual shooter per se, but fun things like that. It's always kind of fun to imagine.
All right. So next, Smirky, you're up.
Hey, okay, so a question that just kind of popped into my head. So we talk about the lore, right? And when I think about like Toontown lore, I think about how there's probably a lot of people in the community who just like don't really pay attention to the lore all that much because they're just in it for like the fun and experience of Toontown. So I guess, and if this doesn't make sense, you can ask me to elaborate. But why do you guys think that players in the Toontown Corporate Clash community should pay attention to the lore, whether it be in-game events like the COO or a comic that gets published?
All right. So in terms of this, the lore that we just the exposition and lore that we give out in comics and the stuff might it's been proven a couple times before actually. Sometimes it points towards an idea or something that's part of the next major update we're working on. So whenever there's a lore exposition, it's always good to sometimes not necessarily read deeper, but always to look into it. This even includes the COO. Just there's an ongoing story. The game is an ongoing story, so it's always good to pay attention because it gives an idea of what's coming next.
And I would say we definitely recognize there's a lot of players that just play the game to enjoy the game. But everything we are doing does have some level of story attached to it. It's just really kind of up to player preference as to what aspects of it they enjoy. Whether they want to follow along with the story and understand, the progression of the story of the game. It's really just player preference.
I really think it makes the game more multifaceted when there's, different ways of consuming media, not just through like the game, it's through comics, it's through social media posts, it's through ARGs. It really makes the whole picture become more 3D.
Awesome. I love all that insight. So thank you for answering that question. And I guess just a last question that I have. So I know that as someone who did play Project Altus back in like 2017, I know that the game has kind of undergone so many changes, whether externally or even internally, that might not necessarily be seen in person. So how would you guys like, I guess, define your goals and I guess like the mission statement of Corporate Clash today, if that makes any sense? Like, just kind of what you would like to achieve with this project.
I mean, I don't have like a perfect mission statement, of course, but I guess kind of reverting back to what I said earlier a little bit, if I were to make a mission statement, it would realistically just be changing the way that like Toontown is played from like a strategy standpoint, but still holding like the core fundamental basics of the game, but just expanding upon some more, difficult and strategic ways. So one of the things that I always look for when I'm playing a game, just in general, even outside of Toontown Corporate Clash, but I'm glad we've also incorporated this into the game a little bit, is you create that like skill ceiling, and that's because of the competitive nature of it, and that competitiveness like keeps people playing, and it forces it, not really forces, but I guess it directs people towards what we consider to be like meta, quote unquote, and then people try to get good at these strategies, hence like the introduction of Zap and all that, because there's a lot of interesting strategies, and I guess it's a little more of a like a high skill, high reward gag track. So things along the lines of that, while still sort of while still adding to the general Toontown experience.
Yeah, I would say also, as far as goals go, I think a definite goal of ours is always to try and deliver the next big thing in this community where everybody's like, it kind of recaptures that experience for you back when Toontown Online would release a new headquarters and you felt blown away by this amazing new update with new gameplay and new experiences and new areas to explore.
Yeah, awesome. I know that excitement is something that a lot of people look forward to experiencing, and I know that I, as a player, have enjoyed the levels of excitement I've experienced through games like Corporate Clash. So, yeah, thank you for answering my questions.
All right, next we will move on to Mega Snoop.
Hey, what's up? So, how many questions do I get again?
You have 2 more questions.
All right. And did that count as a question?
No, you're good.
Okay, then I would have been out because that was 2. So, anyway, the first one I had was just a general question about moderation, because I know that as Toontown has grown and evolved, it no longer needs the ability to attach itself to Disney's regulations. So my question is, why is it still as strict as it is? Now that I can actually ask you guys directly, it doesn't need to be led up to the point where it's got a rated M filter or anything. But why can't we say things like dumb or stupid?
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the moderation lead and like the former moderation leads, although I used to actually be a moderation lead assistant, so I actually think I have some room to work with here. But I think the main reasoning for that is despite the fact that dumb and stupid, like, they're not horrible, like despicable words, but we're just trying to eliminate as many like derogatory words, I guess, as possible. Just derogatory terms in general are something we tend to keep out of the game. I know that gets a little bit dicey when you just say like, I don't know, if a gag miss and you're like, this is dumb because that's not targeted at somebody. But it's one of those things where you kind of have to like weigh your options, because while that would be deemed appropriate technically, it's still, there are instances where you could use dumb in some cases where it wouldn't be nearly as appropriate, if that makes sense. You kind of just got to like pick your poison in a way.
Yeah, but why? Like, why? Because you can say you stink in the game, right? So there's obviously derogatory phrases built into the game. So why limit some but not others?
When the terms of the speed chat, of course the speed chat phrases have some words like that, but the difference between that and the free text is the speed chat is a very limited, like you only say this kind of thing. Of course you can use it in different situations, but they are like phrases that are concrete. And with the free chat, you can say whatever you want when, even though it's like somewhat determined by a whitelist and blacklist. You are pretty free in what you can say. So it's a little bit more restricted in terms of the free chat for, well, that reason specifically. It's just you're able to be a little bit more free with it.
It's really give and take, because people often, what I see is people get caught up in the fact where they're saying, well, most of the players who play nowadays are adults and whatnot. And, a good population of the player base is adults, sure. But there still are kids and younger players in the game. There's players with disabilities. There's players that have all kinds of different experiences. And fundamentally, Toontown is meant to be a happy and positive game. So when it comes to things like, well, why can you say you stink? It kind of harkens back to what Jesse Shell was saying, where, it's great to have a good and happy and positive game, but at some level, you do want to have some kind of, I guess you would say, like, an area where you could release some steam. So, you stink, it's not the worst thing to say to somebody, whereas being able to say you're dumb or you're stupid to somebody can actually be really detrimental to the person.
Understandable. Thank you. And then my second question is, you guys thinking about adding Tuno to the game? It's like Uno, but in Toontown, Tuno. I heard that got a lot of upvotes in the Corporate Clash Discord. Tuno.
We'll just say that the suggestions that get upvoted a lot. I mean, we look at all the suggestions. Really, the game design takes their time and does it well. But we can assure you the ones that get starred are definitely being considered, maybe more so than others, or at least on general terms. So, we can't like confirm or deny anything, but we've definitely seen that for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that you acknowledge it. That's all I have, but thank you guys.
Alrighty, so last but not least, we have 2 more questions from Nickel Jinx. The first one is directed towards anyone. and it asks, would the team ever consider making a brand new game that they built from scratch?
Well, new game from scratch. I think it's. I mean, obviously, everybody here is this is a passion project, but for me personally, I would love to take the skills and such as I have learned working on the corporate clash crew. Once there's an inevitable time where either the game closes or I leave the team, where I can apply those to a actual job in the future, and even to make my own game or to help make another whole game, like this as a career path.
As far as like the entire crew making a game from scratch, I feel like it would have to be at a point where we just no longer feel it's good to continue with Clash, or we would ever actually consider something like that. So I guess it's really just depending on the situations.
Alrighty. And final question. Would you consider adding any more gag tracks, or is the amount we have already enough?
I mean, never say never, but I think the amount of gag tracks we have right now is definitely a good balance. I wouldn't hold anyone's breath that we'll add any new gag tracks anytime soon.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost one of those things where as we expand upon the game more, if we deem it necessary, it will definitely start taking that stuff into consideration. But as far as like the current game is played, we don't feel the need for it because we don't feel like there's like some presence lacking in battle that needs to be filled by, something, whatever that may be. So as of right now, I can say that I'm pretty comfortable with the amount of gag tracks in the game.
Alrighty. And finally, this isn't a question from any particular partner, but did any of the leadership here have any final remarks they wanted to make in regards to the team overall?
Well, to the team itself, there not as many of them are here, but I want to thank them for putting as much effort as they do towards our game because they are the ones that make the game what it is. It's not necessarily leadership that does that; it's the team that works. It's the rest of the team that helps work on the game.
Yeah, seriously. There's some talented people on our team, and I would say it's my honor to be their lead, not the other way around.
I would also agree with that. It's almost kind of ironic for me because I don't necessarily come from a creative background, but just being, like one of the creative team managers is certainly a privilege I don't take for granted. So I love working with everybody, and it's incredible to see the team grow and everybody work on a daily basis.
Yeah, like me and Ted said, I mean, it's just a privilege to be around people who are so talented in the ways that they are. People like Polygon who have been with us for a long time and create entire playgrounds by themselves. It's just there's a lot of people that are just crazy talented.
Well said, everyone. So that wraps up today's Q&A panel. We thank everyone who came out to tonight's event and, of course, all of the questions that came with that. We hope you all found it as enjoyable and informative as we hoped it would be, and that you look forward to all that Corporate Clash has in store for the future. And with that being said, that concludes the Q&A.
Thanks
everybody.
everybody.
Woo! Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
everybody
you.
for coming out.
Yes, thank you
Bye,
for your
guys.
time.